Good afternoon, everybody. If you're just joining us, you're very welcome. And if you were at the earlier panel, you're very welcome back. Good to see you again. Today is a really big day for Irish animation. It's a big day in our calendar. I'm actually on site where the preparations are underway for the big event tonight, the Irish Animation Awards, which kick off at 7 o'clock, hosted by Baz Ashmawi. So we're really looking forward to that, and hopefully you can join us again later for that. Next up, we have our Pushing the Boundaries of Animation panel, which is going to be hosted by Leanne Preston, who's here with us. I want to thank our sponsors, Animation SkillNet and Screen Skills Ireland, for helping us make this happen. And I'm delighted now to be able to introduce you to Leanne, who's going to host your next panel. So Leanne Preston has 15 years experience working in kids and family entertainment business. She started out a career at Nickelodeon, where Leanne worked in the London office on development and production of global original content before switching to the independent producer side as head of development for Red Kite. Leanne later founded Brightbox Creative and worked with Chinese broadcasters Toon Max and CCTV to develop content for Chinese and international audiences. Since moving to LA in 2015, Leanne has worked with Citizen School Productions, with Gaumont as Director of Animation Development, and is an associate producer on the new Lego City Adventure series for Nickelodeon, and also, on top of that, as CEO of Unanico Group. Prior to joining Unanico, Leanne was VP of production for the Indian studio Digitoons, building on their North American and European business, and as director of content and business development for Left Pocket Studio in Shanghai. Also, she's a writer and a story editor, and Leanne developed and story edited and wrote scripts for the international preschool show Emmy and Guru. And as if all of that isn't impressive enough, one of the first things Leanne did once the COVID restrictions in LA lifted was to jump out of a plane at 14,000 feet strapped to a stranger. Leanne, over to you.
Thank you, Ronan. That's quite an introduction. So welcome to today's panel, everybody. I'm joined today by a fantastic panel of guests. We have Nicky Gogan, who is executive producer and head of development at Piranha. We also have Daniel Staines, a creative director and founder at Algorithm. David Morehead, who is working in visual development at Skydance Studios, and Stephen Fagan, who is co-founder and producer. So towards the end of today's session, there'll also be an opportunity for the audience to ask some questions. So to answer those at the end.
What makes it stand out? I think we sort of double down on 2D frame by frame animation, so there's a strong passion for what we do. And
hybrid animation, so a lot of animated characters in live action worlds. You've probably seen, those of you in Ireland, seen the VHI ads, for example, or the Little Christmas ad, and those kind of projects I think we've done on the commercial side. So that sort of, there's a real kind of enthusiasm, I suppose, of trying to, like, I guess, push the boundaries anyway in terms of what's possible. And I guess since I joined the studio a few years ago, one of the things I brought with me was a kind of the connection with Unreal Epic Games. I'd worked with them previously on trying to develop animation pipelines a long time ago, and it was kind of far too early. So one of the things we've done in the studio is we've been working with the Unreal Engine on projects in terms of our development of some of our shows. No, it doesn't suit everything. We also do 2D as well. And the other thing we've kind of built is a pipeline called Animotion, which uses performance capture. So kind of combining then performance capture and real-time rendering is one of the things that we're kind of excited about. And what is really fun in terms of the kind of content we want to make, which is, you know, we're looking at adult animation and working like directly with comedians, so we can have performances captured with animated characters, which can be directed live by the director in the room, you know, so you're kind of directing animated characters, let's say, like you might an actor. That's one of the kind of benefits of what we've been doing as well. It's kind of sort of cost and time saving, and there's lots of pros and cons about using real-time rendering. It doesn't suit every style, obviously, of every look of animation for sure. But yeah, they're the kind of things we've been sort of tinkering around with, and yeah, some of the shows are kind of quite well developed now as well, using the tech. So that's kind of some of the stuff we've been doing.
What inspired that move into real-time pipeline, and has that helped benefit the studio in sort of other ways too?
Yeah, well, I guess it's something I was interested in my background. I ran a festival which was kind of art and technology and creativity and computers and all that kind of stuff, called Darklight, for 14 years. And through that, I'd sort of forged a relationship with Epic Games, and then we ran into them again, myself and Gavin, at SIGGRAPH in LA, which is a big tech kind of creative technologies kind of conference every couple of years in LA. And we saw their Digital Human project, which is like, you know, making realistic humans. So that's not what we're doing, but I suppose reconnecting with them, and at the same time realized, because that Gavin was already interested in performance capture and what it can bring to an animation pipeline. So in some ways, so we're not replacing animators by any stretch of the imagination, you know. So say with performance capture, the setup we have, you might get sort of 80% there, like, so you're kind of blocking, and sort of, you know, the kind of more mundane end of animating is kind of, you know, comes through the data that we get from performance capture, and then the animators and the lip sync and all that kind working like that because they get more time to spend on the really creative part of animating. You know, we're a CG studio mainly, I should say, as well. Performance capture too are kind of fun. Yeah, so I suppose it's a combination of that. Myself and Gavin's history, like we were in art school together. We're kind of, you know, we have a long history of kind of collaborating on programming events like this, for example, over the years and stuff like that. Always looking at kind of what technology brings to creativity in terms of what new tools are out there. So I suppose it was that kind of moment of going, wow, you can do this really interesting work using performance capture, you know, as well as real time, and is combining those two aspects together that we were both interested in, helped us come up with the Animotion pipeline idea. Yeah, so
that's great. And I think we actually have a clip that
now sure we can.
I'm hoping that we'll be able to show, which gives a bit more of an example of that work.
Well, let me tell you what it is first, because it'll be a bit out of context. So this is it's a teaser that we made we actually just finished this just before COVID. I was meant to pitch it at Embrain in March 2020 anyway. But it's a show called IRL, which is some of you guys might have heard me talk about it before, which is a series about adult comedy series about people who've become trapped as their game avatars, but in the real world. So this is the opening kind of section of the pilot, the opening minute of the pilot. Where you can play it then.
Society is a construct, you know? Femininity is a construct, like I believe that. But my ma always said I was the image of my dad, so I needed all the help I could get. Though, I mean, looking like this certainly saves me time in the morning. Do you know what my ma thinks I look like now? Statue of fucking Liberty. Oi! Lesbania! Get a job!
That's it. And so that character is a game character from Paragon, from Epic Games Paragon as well. So they open sourced the assets in that game and they shut it down. So yeah, that's the little clip of IRL. It's good you couldn't hear it. Anyway,
it's a shame we couldn't get the audio, but I'm sure we can maybe get that later on if anybody wants to take a look at it. Yeah. So Daniel, algorithm are also moving into an Unreal real-time pipeline from linear 3D animation, and how has that impacted your ability to develop, produce new projects?
Yeah, I think for us, it was really about, it has been sort of a necessity almost for us to do that. Like we kind of, since the beginning, we've used animation as a kind of asset to augment like physical space. So it started off with it, we do a ton of projection mapping, and that's kind of where we got our we started off basically working, and then in stage design. So it's utilization of kind of animation, the moving image, to use for events basically in the real world. And then over the years, kind of in more recent times, we got an opportunity to create a piece of work for the L'Atelier de Lumière in Paris, which is a really large immersive attraction there basically. So it's an old foundry, and they've covered, it's on a huge scale basically, and they've covered all the walls with projection. So it's floor, basically all the walls around on the floor, and there's a lot of weird geometry in the space as well. So I think at the time it was basically the largest video canvas in the world. Like it's absolutely massive number of pixels. And we attempted to create this piece, or we did create this piece using, rendered animation. And it was incredibly challenging. Like it led to kind of basically a couple of weeks of 24 hours, no sleep whatsoever, basically to get it done. Because you're talking about even a single surface, there was about 30 different surfaces. A single surface was like 4 times 4K basically. So what we kind of realized afterwards when the dust had settled was that we needed to look at a real-time pipeline just to allow us to render the amount of pixels that we needed. And we had a lot of experience already working with game engine technology for our interactive installations. So we kind of we have 2 departments, our animation department and our labs department, who are working on those interactive installations. So it wasn't a huge leap for us. But yeah, and it's something we basically are working now on a kind of our own immersive attraction, basically, which will be all created using game engine technology. We do kind of do a mix though of using the game engine technology to render offline and then also use it for real time as well. So, yeah, it's really exciting and opens up a huge amount of potential for us in the future.
Excellent. And that's a touring immersive experience, is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's kind of, I think with COVID, and then as well, I suppose the idea is we want to try to make something that's very, in terms of the environment, like if you have an experience like this that you're touring around, you don't have to bring all the infrastructure with you. So if you can instead take the experience, in a digital format and then apply it to infrastructure that already exists in that city or that country, we think that's a really exciting idea. Yeah.
Great. Are any of you, Stephen or David, also working in the immersive space at all?
Stephen, go ahead.
Oh yeah, we've one as a hand-drawn studio. I mean, it'd be very difficult to do that, like immersive 3D experiences. Like, so everything we're bringing everything back to the hand-drawn really for us. So, I suppose for immersive technologies and hand-drawn will be an awful strain on the animators. So,
Yes.
I mean, I'm sure that somewhere down the line we could do something maybe using like sort of grease pencil technology where we're animating a 3D space, but. As far as going into anything like that now, just creating really sort of new content that.
Mm-hmm.
Or the money or anything like that. It's usually because of the executive overhead. You can't really push things too far. It has to fit into a certain thing. But I will say I've just started at Skydance a couple months ago, and a new studio like that is a perfect opportunity to sort of explore and push the boundaries. And needless to say, we're looking at all the real-time stuff and everything like that as well. But yeah, anyway, that's it.
And I was going to ask you a bit more about that, David. So it must be an exciting opportunity to, be coming in sort of at the early stages of a studio, sort of helping to build that from, the ground up, and quite a difference between that and maybe some of the other roles you've held in the past. So could you tell us a little bit more about that experience?
Yeah, I'm not an official spokesman for Skydance at this point. Like I said, I just started a couple months ago, but I can talk about starting studios. I've had an embarrassment and riches in terms of starting DreamWorks from day one, DreamWorks Animation in 1995. I think I was employee number 32 on Prince of Egypt, and had 12 fantastic years at DreamWorks. And then when Sony Pictures Animation started up, I got in there early on the second film they were working on. And 11 great years at Sony. And again, and it just completely happened to work out that way. By no means was it designed, sort of like the Forrest Gump of animation careers, where despite my incompetence, happened to wind up, these awesome things going on. And this latest one at Skydance, I hadn't been thinking about leaving Sony. Spider-Verse was pretty successful, and we were thinking about working on the second one. But when John Lasseter calls you and asks you to come work for him, you kind of do.
Great. Well, congratulations on the new role.
Thank you.
Stephen, just to kind of speak to your earlier comment about sort of working in different types of content, different spaces. Obviously there's been a big increase in demand for adult animation in more recent times. And how has that, maybe given you more opportunities to explore developing different types of content?
Oh, I think it's a really exciting time for animation, really. I think audiences are becoming more accepting of animation as a medium, as not just creating a genre for preschool and kids, which can often be put in, right? Thanks to like Spider-Verse and other features, as obviously it's aged up, but it's really exciting time for animation to break into new genres, and so for the medium of animation to break into new genres. So we're like developing animated horror, feature horror, and just gone really, really dark. So we optioned a graphic novel like that we really liked, and said, right, let's develop this into like a low budget feature, but in animation instead. And I suppose when we start looking at animation and what it's been capable of, it's capable of anything really, isn't it? So and horror is actually perfect for it, because you can really bring in the abstract and those sort of scary things in animation, like, and push like the VFX just as much as you can push on the other part of it. So for animation now, it's a really exciting time, because people are really accepting on it, really, I think. So and I think 2D animators, I think there's something about that sort of section of animation that just really has a chance now to really just do some really cool, edgy stuff, you know. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And Nicky, Piranha also have quite a bit of experience developing and producing content in that grown-up animated space, right? So how have you seen sort of the shift towards a thirst for more adult animation sort of benefiting the studio and your sort of ability to sort of be more creative and generate different kinds of ideas? And how do you think the sort of reception has been to international based sort of grown up animated content, which is a space that's been previously very dominated in the US?
Yeah, I'm just I'm thinking, just to follow on from what Stephen was saying about the expressionism that you can bring to a story with animation is, you know, unparalleled. And I'm thinking of Unbound, because there's two things saying Unbound on my screen here at the moment, but also something I want to talk about a little bit as well. It's a series, an Amazon series that was made with Hisko Husling directed it, and Tommy Plata, it was the exec, they're an animation team that I've worked with on a documentary before. And just in terms of, I don't know if you guys have seen it, it's an amazing series. It's an very adult themes. It's about a woman whose mental health is disintegrating over the course of the series, and just the sort of way animation can feed into, you know, what's happening on your internal mind on the screen. You know, it adds such another layer, you know, to the way stories can be communicated, and characters' internal struggles can be communicated on screen, you know. And I just think it's just really harnessed the possibilities and potential, you know, for kind of I think it's a bit of a watershed moment, that series. I think it's extraordinary, and if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend it. But yeah, so in terms of that, I think the kinds of stories we tell, dramas, adult dramas and adult comedy, whatever kind of we tell, I think the fact that animation is now kind of becoming a kind of medium to tell those stories is super exciting, and just kind of, you know, I think it's just going to soar, you know, really, in terms of the possibilities. There's so many different styles, like the Love and Robots anthology, for example, you know. I haven't watched the second bunch. I know they've dropped on Netflix recently, you know, but, you know, I'm excited to see just the various styles and, you know, the imaginations of people kind of working in animation and telling stories using that as a medium. It's just brilliant, you know. So I just think, yeah, I think overall, in terms of globally and for storytellers all around the world, I think it's a wonderful thing that's happened, you know, whereas that, you know, adult animation is now not such a tiny niche. It's still niche, obviously, but it's not such a tiny niche. It's definitely breaking through, I suppose, and I think the streamers obviously have a big part to play in that now, you know, because getting any grown-up animation on TV on prime time is so difficult to break in unless you've got one of the really big names attached to your project. You know, it's really difficult to get, you know, a show on air, you know. So the streamers have a big part to play, I think, in the visibility of that. So as a studio ourselves, bringing it back to us, like, we're hopefully taking advantage of that, you know. We have a couple of shows we've developed. We haven't got anything into production yet, but we're eking slowly forward, you know. I still find we need to get, you know, kind of writers with credits, you know, that buyers recognize, you know, and you know what I mean, and have a track record behind them and stuff. It's very difficult. Ireland is such a little outpost, you know, really. And when it comes to stuff like that, maybe not in kids animation, and obviously Cartoon Saloon are, you know, have been nominated for various Oscars and whatnot, but in terms of getting half-hour comedy onto television or onto networks and stuff, it's such a tough journey, you know, to break in, you know. But we're doing our best to try, I suppose. You know, yeah. Does that answer your question, sort of?
Yeah, no, I think so, and I think it sort of leans into what sort of Stephen was saying as well about there's some exciting opportunities, but it's still challenging to kind of sort of break through. But thankfully there are sort of more spaces to go now, whereas in the past, I feel like it was quite limited with, you know, opportunity to pitch to a very small pool of execs in the US, really, in that sort of grown-up animation space. There weren't many places to go with your content, whereas now, you know, with streamers, you know, there are more doors to sort of knock on, and there are more opportunities to be had. And you're absolutely right that it's been very much a sort of talent and sort of almost celebrity sort of driven sort of space as well, in terms of like, you know, your A-list people sort of being the benchmark to sort of get that project over the line. But I feel like, at least sort of from my perspective on the industry overall, there appears to be more of a thirst for, you know, looking and developing and producing content, which is, you know, authentic voices, authentic visions, which is from different spaces, which is from different countries. And I'm really excited and encouraged by that. And David, I was just going to ask you, sort of, obviously you're in the US, like me, and you know, coming from sort of a place where sort of you know, LA's really sort of dominated the animation industry for a really long time. Have you seen a bit more of a trend and you know, interest in looking at content which is coming from other countries?
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. You know, writers, a few of my friends here, writers, are having a heyday because they have all these ideas and stories that they couldn't have done before, are now able to pitch them, not only in animation, obviously, but live action. But the great thing is, I think we see the trend headed towards being able to tell stories, any kind of stories about divorce, or stories about, you know, death, if animated stories about that. And I think that it's going to be great when people refer to it, oh, that's a horror movie and it happens to be animated, or oh, that's a thriller and it happens to be animated, or oh, that's a rom-com that happens to be animated. And so the genre first, and then, oh, by the way, it's animated. And ultimately, I think that, I mean, even now when you look at a big live action blockbuster, if you're looking at a superhero, unless it's this, it's not really him or her, it's animated. It's, you know, a CG character, probably animated by animators. So ultimately, I think that we're moving in the right direction, both with international stuff and even internally. Because before, pushing the boundaries in animation was anything that wasn't G-rated. And now, pushing the boundaries, we're talking about different genres, we're talking about different techniques, and ultimately being able to tell more personal stories.
Absolutely.
Bring an animated reality show. That's one of the projects we're developing.
Oh, that sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it's gonna be
That's
fun.
very cool. Can you tell us anything about that, or is that top secret?
It's kind of early days, but it's just the more I suppose advanced our performance capture pipeline gets, the more kind of way we think. You know, it kind of started with us working with comedians and doing like live animation, like comedy stand up, and then we're like, oh, I wonder now if it's possible. You know, and it is. You know what I mean? Technically it is possible. We're just, I don't talk about it too much because we're still just developing it. It's like a seed of an idea, but yeah, but it'd be really kind of fun, you know, to have a cast of characters, you know, in a sort of basically the idea in a kind of Big Brother house.
Wearing mocap suits.
What? Yeah, they're wearing mocap suits, yeah, but their characters then would be yeah, kind of not that.
That's great.
I'm gonna have to talk to you, Daniel, about a few things.
You'd also get a pretty good show if you put a group of traditional animators in a room together and just filmed it, because you don't spend any time around a traditional animation or storyboard. People would tune in.
So Daniel, Algorithm are creating some really innovative content. Can you tell us a little bit about, you know, working on content for different kind of screens? So we've got different kinds of canvases that, you know, it's not the small screen, it's not the big screen, and how that kind of impacts the way that you work.
Yeah, so I think the way we kind of developed So our development was very organic. Like our company has 6 directors kind of from different backgrounds, and we were very interested in using kind of animation in this live setting, like I said. But we started off basically as freelancers and kind of came together, and we've just worked really on projects that come in, you know, job to job basically. So we've really diverse like range of clients and a really diverse range of services that we offer. So really, you know, whenever we get a new brief in, it could be for a physical installation, it could be for something for the web, it could be like a generative piece of work. And we just kind of look at that and then see, okay, is there a piece of interesting technology we can apply to this? And like, what's the kind of creative effect the client's looking for? So it's very interesting. Like, you never know kind of day to day what you're going to be working on or what the next kind of approach is going to be. But I think it's nice because, well, it allows us to stay across like a lot of the new emerging technologies and just kind of see, you know, is there something specifically we can take from this and kind of use in a way for the client, you know, to get the effect they're after.
That's great. So you have a very kind of bespoke sort of approach to creating and producing content then for completely different experiences, for completely different canvases.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's quite exciting. Like, you can kind of be inspired by anything and then go and utilize that for whatever the client brief might be. Yeah.
Great. And David, you're working a lot in the sort of feature film space. You know, what kind of predictions do you have for kind of the future of feature films? Obviously, the past year or so has been an incredible challenge for the kind of theatrical film market. It's led to us sort of adapting and developing different ways to sort of, you know, get those movies to audiences. You know, some have been proven to be extremely successful on streaming platforms. But how do you see kind of the future of feature animation evolving?
That's a great question. It's pretty up in the air right now. Everybody is scrambling to, you know, hook up streaming services or theatrical. Luckily, the Kong versus Godzilla did really well, and I think was a glimmer of light and hope for the distribution system. But to be honest, nobody really knows. Everybody is sort of hedging their bets with the streamers, and at the same time trying to book space in theaters, which is, from what I gather, increasingly crowded right now. You know, even because imagine several studios have several movies now, a backlog, and all trying to wedge those studios, both live action and animation, into a lineup in theaters. And at the same time, many theaters are actually closing, unfortunately. So the Cinerama Dome here in LA, which has been around since the 50s, sadly is closing. So to answer your question, I don't really know. We're all sort of curiously awaiting what's going to happen in the feature space. But I think that it's actually good. You know, as you said, new outlets also provide new levels of entertainment value. You know, we used to call animation, you know, oh, it's animation, but imagine it more like music. You have different types of music. You have music that makes you want to dance. You have classical music. You have rock. You have R&B. And I think that, and with the streaming services, it's no longer going to be feature and TV. It could be episodic, or it could be a mix or a blend. And I think that's another opportunity for animation to really take hold and to expand into many more areas.
Yeah, absolutely. And how has that kind of impacted sort of the thinking, you know, in the sort of development of Skydance as a studio, sort of, and your plans in terms of like releasing, you know, future feature films? Has that been sort of impacting the way that you're sort of approaching that?
Yeah, again, I'm not officially speaking for Skydance, but if I understand it correctly, that originally they had a distribution deal lined up with Paramount to release one of the first features. They've just recently, last month, announced a deal with Apple TV Plus, and that's also going to be released. And it's unclear to me. I'm sure somebody knows, but I don't really know what the relationship between theatrical and, you know, the streamer like Apple TV is going to be, and how that's all going to work.
Sure. And
But
Stephen, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, but it's hopeful. Either way, I think it works out in favor of animation. Either way it ends up, like I said, for all the opportunities that it offers, it's either way is going to be great for animation.
Yeah, we're just having to kind of pivot and adapt and change a little bit, right? Whereas in the past, it was sort of a more sort of a linear process in terms of actually sort of developing and producing and releasing your content. Whereas now we're all having to sort of think about different ways of doing things because, obviously the industry is constantly evolving. We've had to deal with COVID challenges. There's been just so many different things that have sort of come our way as sort of producers and creatives that have sort of affected the way that we work. And Stephen, you were talking a little bit about how you're developing a horror animated feature. Is that right?
Yeah.
So is that with a kind of streaming platform kind of output in mind, or is it something that you were thinking about more as a sort of online thing, or are you exploring your different options as you're developing?
We're exploring our options, but I suppose we kind of take things that get in a different slant. I suppose as a European studio, we don't have as ready an access to the SVODs as someone based in LA. So it's I think like it's basically it's Sean's passion project as a director, and I suppose like how we're doing things that we're not really looking at. And we are considering, okay, what we're hoping that the feature will be is movement from into an art house, or transition from art house into mainstream. That's kind of our plan. Obviously, if it goes to SVOD, it would be great. We're only a small studio, and we have to sort of try to adapt to where we can show it. But it's going to be a great feature. However, for us as a studio, it's more about knowing who we are and knowing what we want to do. And that's the most important thing for us to know, like, and why we're doing these things is like because this is the type of stuff we love. Where it goes essentially is like whoever agrees with us and goes, yes, that's really it. But we're gonna make it anyway. Do you know what I mean? That's kind of our attitude to things. Just make it anyway, because like we're not going for like as a small European studio, the idea of competing against someone like Skydance or Sony or Pixar or DreamWorks, like the budgets are just not there. So just doing stuff that we want to do, we have the opportunity now because we're going to do it anyway, and just trying to fund it ourselves and try to do whatever way to make it happen. It's about really making this piece of content, and someone's going to take it because they're going to see it and they're going to love it. And I know it's not really the traditional attitude of like find your buyer and make it, but we've made a promise that we're going to make it, and we're going to make it, and that's really it. So it's and the reason why we're doing that is because the director wants to make it, they're passionate about it, we believe we can do it. We're not aiming to make a 10 million euro feature. We're making a 3 million euro feature, and that gives us an awful lot more scope to do what we want. Obviously an awful lot less scope to push the boat out and do something like really high-end stuff, but where it goes really, I think the project's good, it'll sell, and we're sort of committed to doing it. So I don't know if that answers the question or not, but I think the answer for us is we're doing something that we want to do, and as a small studio we have that power to go, well, we want to do this, and we're doing it, and that's just it. Where if a bigger studio, we might have like a lot more, like as David said, like a lot more execs to answer to, so we have that freedom just to create what we want. That's kind of what's important to us.
Yeah. It sounds like as a studio you have a very sort of organic approach to sort of creating, developing, cultivating new ideas and talent. How does your sort of approach to coming up with new things work? Do you like get a room of people together, obviously with sort of remote working as well? How is that working for you?
Yeah, it's good. And really, what we do, I think, because I had a lot of time to really think about what a studio is. So that's when we're going through how we set up Studio Meala, I was like really thinking, what does a studio have to be? And especially nowadays with emerging technologies and so on. And it's really a place where it develops talent and manages talent in a way that creates great stuff. So the most important thing in that is the talent and the people. So how we do that is just try our best to support and empower the people we work with. If they trust us enough to share their ideas with them, with us, that's enough, and then we can work with them then to see what happens. But I think it's about creating a sense that the people trust us enough with their ideas and where we take them, first and foremost. If we can just establish that as studios, so people feel safe enough to go, here, I have an idea, what do you think? As opposed to go, I don't want to tell them they have an idea, they might knock it down, they might tell us it's crap, or they might just rob it, you know. But if people are comfortable enough to say, I really like this idea, can you help me make it? That's all you really need, you know. If people trust us to do it, and it doesn't have to be like a massive feature. It might be an idea for a show, it might be like a 10-second clip or something like that. It's really creating that level of trust where people can say, I have an idea, you know. I know it sounds mad simple, but that's
ideas can come from anywhere, right?
Yeah, they can, and so letting people feel safe enough to share ideas is the most important thing, really.
Great.
So it's not any magic.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, there's not any mad. Like we've created a team of the idea team, and everyone goes into, and any people are specially selected to have these special. No, it's literally, if you have a good idea and you feel you can share it, that's where the good ideas are going to come from, I think. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Having that kind of creative space to just be able to sort of come up with cool stuff and see what you like. And being a small studio, I'm sure you have more flexibility to do the kind of things you're really passionate about, that you really want to do.
Yeah.
Which is great. Nicky, so how has this sort of work from home environment sort of impacted your studio, and has that given you more opportunity to work with more international artists, creatives? And what have the sort of challenges been on your front?
That's interesting, actually. Yeah, I mean, it's fine. I do like it. I think we're going to go back to some kind of blended scenario, I think, for most people. I think it's been tough on the younger artists in the studio, the graduates that we would have hired who are maybe sharing a house with 5 of the lads or something, you know what I mean? And they're kind of not really able to work from home. And that's been tricky, and I think, some of them actually have been going into the studio. There's only been a couple, they've been on different floors, but, we kind of had to make space for them to do that because work from home wasn't an option. I definitely missed the kind of those creative chats, at lunchtime or when the kettle's boiling, all that sort of stuff, which is loads of ideas and loads of things get solved, all that kind of you don't have, obviously when I've had more headspace in terms of studio. I'm at my computer all day, your kind of days filled, whereas when you're at home you might wander around a bit more, or you're going out for walks. It's meant to take longer breaks, all the kind of health stuff we've been told to do, but in fact that's actually helped, I think, free my creative part of my brain up a bit more. I started live drawing again, for example, because I do develop the shows with people in the studio. But I think I think it's harder to, like what Steve is saying, like those kind of getting to know the new artists in the studio, finding out what they're like, finding out if they have any ambitions to create their own work, or are they happy, just to be working away, working on other people's designs and being part of the kind of the pipeline, but, and kind of, those discoveries, I suppose, of the younger, ages, but of new people who come to work in the studio and getting to know them on socially and finding out what their ambitions are and where they see themselves headed, if they're auteurs or if they're into just signing off at 6 o'clock and going home, you know what I mean? And I suppose that I'm feeling I'm missing, because we have hired a bunch of people over the course of the 18 months and I don't really know them, and one of our new recruits won the overall prize in the Dingle Animation Awards, and I was like, wow, I hadn't even seen his short films, you know what I mean? So that kind of thing, whereas if I was in the studio, we do show and tells every once in a while, and show people's work and show the work I've been working on in the studio, because there's so many different projects going on and stuff. So so I think that whole churning of creativity that happens in a building with people and going out for pints on Friday after work and all that stuff, I think that's kind of definitely, I've missed all that, in terms of how I've accessed maybe, people to help us get our shows made or to, buy our shows or finance or co-produce with. yeah, I've been at a good few of the markets virtually, you know, and it's very odd, you know, because you don't have the chance meetings, or you're out for dinner with someone and there with somebody else who you've been trying to meet for like 3 years, you know. Obviously that's not happening, but I did have some good meetings at Kidscreen in a way. I think there was far less people there, and I got meetings with people who I might have been trying to get hold of for a while, who, you know, studiously ignored me up till now, you know what I mean, and they've kind of gone somewhere, so that's great. But that could be also part of the fact that the studios now finished the second season of our first show and stuff like that, and we're a bit more visible, I suppose, in the international landscape. I don't know, but anyway, yeah, so it's been mixed, and definitely most people, I think, apart from maybe people who can't really work from home or want to go back in a sort of blended shape of a kind of a work future. Yeah.
I think so too. I think that hybrid sort of work life, I think, is a nice balance for a lot of people, right? Especially people with families, especially, you know, people who are working in different countries, who are, you know, working remotely with different studios and things like that already. That kind of sort of hybrid sort of style really suits the studios, I think, and the people, I think, for the most part, right? Having that kind of opportunity to have some people in the office maybe some of the time, but not necessarily all the time.
I think the commute as well for a lot of our staff. We were right in the centre of Dublin City. You've been in our studio, right? It's right in the middle of the city, so getting there can take hours. Do you know what I mean? Depending on where you're coming from, which is insane, you know. So that sort of stuff, I think people are like happy to leave that behind them.
I think it's best because our studio's in the west of Ireland, in a small town. So there's a big sort of national park where we drive through every day. We love the trees and I love it.
Well, here's the thing, I quite like it because when I live quite close to the studio, but before that I lived in Shankill, and I used to quite like the long bus ride into town, you know, because I could listen to music and stuff. It's the only chance I really had in my life to listen to Spotify. But anyway, yeah.
Some people like that, right? But other people, it's like, oh my gosh, like David and I could probably speak to the LA traffic a little bit, and how like a hybrid sort of work life would benefit so many people here. So I'm sure a lot of people are vouching for that here in LA as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, go ahead, David.
I was just seconding that. Yeah, absolutely. Don't get me started on the traffic in LA.
Is it back? That's the question. Is it back, or did it ever go away?
It didn't completely go away. It went away for a couple of weeks, and people started driving incredibly fast on the open freeways, and traffic accidents went up by like 1,000%. Fatal accidents increased because people were going ridiculously fast. People who probably never gone that fast. If you grew up in LA, you would never have the opportunity to go that fast.
Gridlock the whole time, basically.
Yeah.
Right. Definitely.
But the hybrid thing is great, especially, you know, working the Skydance production studios in Madrid. So it's kind of nice. The hybrid thing is, I think eventually will turn into early morning meetings at home via Zoom, because, you know, it'd be like starting at 7 a.m. here in LA. So you'd have like a block of meetings until sort of midday, and then you might have a couple hours off, and then you could pop into the studio in the afternoon for a couple hours. I think it could work out really well.
Yeah, it definitely gives people more flexibility, right? More options. So I think we just have one question so far. I'm surprised we don't have more from Facebook. So if anybody else has any questions, you know, while you're watching, feel free to send those through, and we'll try to answer as many as we can. So just this one. So what are your thoughts on the democratization of the tools available to make animation and on audience generated content? Who wants to go first? Nicky?
Sure. I've been talking about Unreal Engine, you know, and it's free. You know, so I'm for that. And the festival I ran, Darklight, was all about the democratization of, you know, technology and the birth of the internet and being able to stream video. It's like started in 1999, so going way back to early adopter days, you know. So I'm all about that, you know. And, you know, we've played around with Blender a bit in the studio for stuff, you know, and looked at different, I mean, we also use other software like Flame and stuff like that, which is crazy expensive. So it's kind of a mixture of stuff that we use in the studio. But personally, I'm all about that. Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting actually. One of your questions, which we didn't really get around to talking about, was like kind of the audience stuff. And I think that there's if we're talking about social media and influencers, there's a bunch of kind of virtual influencers now, that kind of avatars and stuff. And I'm just kind of waiting out. There's a few I think I've seen, but like animated, users, people, I mean, sure, your phone and Snapchat can do stuff that we would have paid a huge amount of money to. I think TikTok is just a revelation and revolution. It's just brilliant. I'm slightly afraid of it, but that's because I'm old. But like, it's amazing. It's just, yeah, it's brilliant. I love all that. Yeah, I know they're like collecting all of my data in the background and stuff and all that. But at the same time, I think as an expression of creativity, I think the lot of stuff that's out there at the moment, it's just brilliant.
Yeah, I think kind of coming from the immersive space, the other thing is the combination, I suppose, of something like Unreal Engine with virtual reality is incredibly exciting. Like, I think when kind of we started, it requires like a huge amount of equipment and money and cost to create something that's really, really immersive. But like now with a, sub €1,000 headset, Unreal Engine and a gaming PC, you can transport yourself into another world. Like, that's, for me, is really, really exciting. And I think that this this space, kind of immersive space, like even the parameters like that you can play around within there, like it's so hard to, like, we have to go on site, to fully understand like what the experience is going to be like when we're there. But now you can basically just sit in your bedroom and kind of explore these new conventions and stuff like that. So I think that's one of the beauties, I suppose, the situation we're in now.
Yeah, I think it's like an interesting time because, like you were just saying, Daniel, it was like the industry in the past, things were done in a very sort of specific way, and now there's sort of the opportunity for people at home to almost be sort of trialing things and coming up with content and sort of putting it out there online and seeing what happens with it as well. Getting some real interest from that. So almost as like producers, we're sort of competing with like the audience at home as well, in a way, a little bit, and that's keeping us on our toes.
Yeah, definitely. I think when you look through like Instagram and stuff, the amount of kind of independent people that are involved in animation now, just artists basically creating content in all different mediums, like it's insane, like just the quality of the work that's out there. So yeah,
I think a lot of people are honing their kind of comedy styles as well, and really getting their, like, there's so much comedy talent out there as well. It's brilliant, like in terms of looking at people for writing on shows or collaborating in some way on projects too, because we're obviously doing that comedy stuff. So it's brilliant resource for that too.
If you access to learning, sorry guys.
That was it.
Sorry. Yeah, I think the access to learning now as well, it's the barrier to entry is much lower. I mean, like going to college and to do animation in the 90s, they have a peg bar and you have a CCTV video camera and you wouldn't have any of that kit, but at home. But like now you can just go to YouTube and learn how to animate and how to draw with some of the best in the world, and I think that access so it's not so much as much the tools as it is the tools and the learning combined is what's really, really powerful.
Definitely.
Yeah.
How has that sort of been something that you've seen as well in sort of your visual development experience?
Yeah, it's awesome to see once the technology is no longer a barrier to entry, and it's available on your phone or your laptop or whatever, then again the real ideas are the commodity. So anybody can do it, but who has the better ideas? And I think that we're discovering all this talent. It might be niche, one or two people here and there, or somebody out in the Midwest somewhere that nobody's ever heard of. Abilities and opportunities. Being in LA in this sort of microcosm where this ecosystem, it's the same people, same studios, same mix of stuff, kind of like Taco Bell. It's the same ingredients, just sort of mixed up differently. But now, there's only 4 ingredients at Taco Bell. But now you have this just incredible influx of people and ideas and everything from everywhere, and technology. It's all coming together, and it's literally the revolution is happening right now. So it's exciting.
I will say the one thing that on the opposite side of that is, I suppose it's one of those things to be aware of as well. Like we have a lot of talent comparing themselves against the whole world because of technology. They might be a really good sort of 2D sketch artist, and they go into Pinterest and say all these artists to do so much other things that they can't do, and they compare themselves against the world. So it really has to be a case of like understanding that like you're learning and everyone's learning and adapting these new technologies at different paces and in different ways. So it really comes down to those are really find something they love and get better at that and develop the talent in that specific area instead of trying to go, okay, all this technology is free for me to use, so I should master all of it instead of picking one or two things that they really, really love to do.
Still, nothing is faster than 2D. Going from crazy idea and in terms of pushing boundaries, it's way easier to push boundaries in 2D than it is to build a whole 3D new pipeline, new shader, new whatever it is. It's just like you sit down with a piece of pencil and paper and a yellow flip book. Sticky pad flip book.
One thing is the frame rates might be like we're doing like 25 seconds of hand-drawn animation a week. It's 20 seconds. You can probably get more done with 3D or CG. So it depends really on the fidelity. But I hear you. It's easier to get going faster, I think.
Well, I think we're just about out of time. So we'll need to wrap up today's session. But I just wanted to say thank you to you all for joining us today. It's been great having you on the panel, pushing the boundaries of animation. And thank you all for joining us on Facebook and YouTube Live as well. Thank you to Animation Ireland. And hopefully some of you can tune in for the Irish Animation Awards a little bit later on.
Great.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Everybody. All right.